Welcome back to another video on the channel. First off, sorry about the inactivity on the channel recently after the US Open and French Open sort of being back to back, a month of Grand Slam tennis solid. I felt like it was all I did was watch tennis for a month, so I did want to take a little break. And also I've been busy applying for jobs and doing courses and stuff as I'm looking to get into work, but I am back previewing the ATP finals. We have a fantastic lineup. Diego Schwartzman and Andrei Rublev competing in it for the first time, which is fantastic for the fans watching around the world. It's the top 8 players in the world competing for a title, and yeah, it's just going to be fantastic quality. I did plan on going to the event. I was hoping to cover it or just go as a fan with it being in London, but unfortunately due to coronavirus I'll just be watching on the TV like everybody else around the world. So I just thought I would do a quick preview talking about each player, sort of looking how their 2020's gone, how I assess their chances going into next week. I would also be doing daily uploads, previewing the matches coming up and also reviewing the matches that have happened. I'll be writing live text commentaries I think every day on Grand Slam Tennis Online, so I'll leave a link to their website below. And also if you'd like to watch my coverage of this event and also Grand Slam events next year and other ATP and WTA events where I will hopefully be travelling to some events as media and getting to cover them. If coronavirus allows that, then that's something I hope to do next year. So if you do want to sort of follow my coverage and listen to my thoughts on tennis, then do subscribe. It does help when I'm applying for sport jobs. Having a profile does help, so any subscriptions are massively appreciated, and also any views. And I have got a Twitter account as well, which I cover the tennis on, so if you do want to follow that, I will leave a link to that in the description below as well. So finally moving on to next week's event, kicking things off with Group A, Novak Djokovic, Daniil Medvedev, Alexander Zverev and Diego Schwartzman, and Group B, Rafael Nadal, Dominic Thiem, Andrei Rublev and Stefanos Tsitsipas. And there we have 8 fantastic tennis players who've all enjoyed success in different parts of 2020, albeit we haven't had the full calendar. We didn't have Wimbledon. All of them players have done fantastically well this year under the circumstances and will provide us with a fantastic tournament, I'm sure. So kicking things off with the world number 1, Novak Djokovic, kicked off 2020 in unbelievable form, 26 match win streak, won 6 out of 6 matches at the ATP Cup, won an 8th Australian Open title, followed up by titles in Dubai and Cincinnati. Then eventually the winning streak came to an end when he defeated himself, a disqualification at the US Open last 16 against Pablo Carreño Busta. He did recover well, I think, from that disqualification to take the title in Rome and reach the final of the French Open where he was completely dismantled by Rafael Nadal, which I'll come on to a bit later in the video. Djokovic had a surprising defeat to qualify as Sonego in Vienna, but that was a tournament that Djokovic achieved what he went for. I think to reach the third round he secured the world number 1 spot, which is exactly what he wanted. And it certainly wasn't the Djokovic we usually see against Sonego, which is taking nothing away from the young player who claimed a fantastic, probably career best win. But Djokovic's intensity wasn't there on that day, and I expect to see him much better at this event. Overall, I think it's been a good but not a fantastic year for Djokovic. He didn't have Wimbledon, which is out of his control. He would have been a massive favourite for that event, having won it the last 2 years. He let himself down, I think, in the US Open without Rafa and Roger being there. It was a fantastic opportunity to close the gap on the Grand Slam list, but he did. He let himself down. Then he got beat by Rafa Nadal Masterclass in Paris, which is no shame in that. He's done it to many players. I think if Djokovic is to win the most Grand Slams, then he has to have a fantastic 2021 and probably win 3 Grand Slams out of the 4. So moving on to Daniil Medvedev. Medvedev's had an up and down 2020. I was looking at his career statistics and how his 2020 has gone. I've been a little bit disappointed with his level so far in 2020. The first part of the season certainly didn't go well. But the second half, he has improved. He reached a semi-final of the US. He lost in a close semi-final to Dominic Thiem. It was 3-love, but I think all 3 were tie breaks. That really could have went either way. I think Thiem's produced better tennis and perhaps had a little bit more experience in the big moments. he comes into this tournament though in fine form. You know, he won the Paris Masters earlier this month, beating Tsitsipas, Diego Schwartzman and Raonic. And Stefanos Tsitsipas was talking about this a few months ago. I was reading an interview this morning where Tsitsipas said Medvedev is one of the hardest players to play against on tour. He's very deceptive. He's got a very unique game style. He uses flat, low ball striking. He likes the long grueling points, ultra consistent. Never plays with heavy spin. As I say, just flat, heavy ball striking. Very difficult to defend against. But I think he's also won the most 1-4 shot rallies in the world this year, which is very, very surprising when you think he's a player that likes to rally and chase balls down and counter punch. He's also got the power to hurt you when attacking short balls. There's no massive negatives to Medvedev's game. I think he's very solid all round, and I am surprised that he hasn't won more in his career. He is still very young, but when I look at Medvedev, I'm never really sure why he's losing matches. I don't know whether it's more mentally down to physically, but I think his game is very, very good. I think one slight negative is perhaps that he hasn't got a go-to shot that can provide the difference between him winning and losing. Things like tie breaks. He lost tie breaks to Dominic Thiem in that semi-final of the US Open, and I just think if Medvedev had that big go-to shot that he could reel off 3 or 4 times in a tie break, that could be the difference between him winning and losing. But certainly not going to pick faults in Medvedev's game. I think he's a fantastic young player that will continue to improve with experience, and I think he's a player that if he could win one Grand Slam, that he could go on to win 2, 3, 4 multiple Grand Slams. Fantastic player. I'm looking forward to seeing next week and seeing how he backs up that win in Paris. Moving on to Alexander Zverev. This is the best year of Alexander Zverev's career on court, especially. I think when Zverev sort of came through 4 or 5 years ago as a teenager, there was early pressure from the fans and the media that this guy was going to be the next Roger Federer and win 15, 16 plus Grand Slams, and that's incredibly difficult to do and incredibly difficult to shoulder that pressure. It certainly had a negative impact on Zverev's game. I think he changed as a player, trying to impress the crowd and trying to hit winner after winner rather than just focusing on his tennis and being the player that he is, and being the player that got him to where he was that day. I think he sort of reverted to that over the past year, and especially this year he's been fantastic on court. Tennis is a game of very small margins, and your game can unravel very quickly, and I think he is a young player. He sort of struggled to deal with that, but I do think he's dealing better on court emotionally, and his performances are certainly improving all the time in Grand Slams especially. He reached the semi-final of the Australian Open this year, the final of the US, lost on both occasions to Dominic Thiem, but we all know how well Dominic Thiem's playing and adapting to hard courts all the time. You could argue he should have won the US Open final, 2 sets up. He did serve for the title, and yeah, he's a very young player, but you don't get many chances to win Grand Slams in this day and age when you've got the likes of Dominic Thiem improving all the time. You've still got Rafael Nadal there winning all the time, Novak Djokovic, return of Roger Federer in Australia. He's also got all the other young guns to compete with. Some even in this event when you look at Yannick Sinner, Borna Coric, Felix Auger-Aliassime. Then you've got the likes of Tsitsipas, Medvedev. It's going to be a very tough task to win a Grand Slam, and will Zverev ever get a better chance to win a Grand Slam? You could argue against the 2 sets up and serving for the title, but as I say, still a very young player. I'm sure there's still more to come, and I'm sure he'll get there one day. He has won 12 of his last 13 hardcourt matches, won this title back in 2018. He's got a big, aggressive game style, which is well suited to a fast hardcourt over best of 3 set matches. He's shown before in the past that he can blow anybody off the court on a fast hardcourt, and I certainly wouldn't be writing off Zverev lifting this title come next weekend. Moving on to Diego Schwartzman, playing in this event for the very first time, and I'm delighted that Schwartzman's reached this stage. He's probably been my favourite player of the year to watch, other than Djokovic this year, and possibly Andrei Rublev as well, but undoubtedly one of the players of the year. He's reached the final in Rome, beating Rafael Nadal along the way on clay, which is, we all know, an impossible task. Then beat Dominic Thiem in an absolutely thrilling quarter-final of the French Open. Probably my match of the year, I would say. outclassed by Nadal in the second meeting at the French Open, but still a fantastic run of form and a fantastic clay court season for Diego Schwartzman. Hard court is certainly not his best surface. There's other players in this tournament, especially with bigger weight of shot. Djokovic beat him on clay in that Rome Masters final, so you'd have to fancy Djokovic to beat him on a fast hard court, which the tables have sort of turned in terms of who likes the surfaces the most. Diego's definitely up against it, this group, with Zverev, Djokovic and Medvedev, but he's still got a huge fight. He's still had a fantastic year. I'm sure he's very confident. He's got nothing to lose. As I say, he doesn't come in this tournament as one of the favourites, but he's got great variations, great speed. He does have power of his own from the back of the court, great counter puncher. And if a player like Medvedev or Zverev was to not turn up and sort of capitulate, then I'm sure Schwartzman will be there to take full advantage of that. Moving on to Group B, kicking things off with Rafael Nadal. Nadal lost to Dominic Thiem in the Australian Open quarter-final. That match, I watched the full highlights of the day, and I didn't realise how incredible of a level that match was played at. I do remember watching the match live, but didn't sort of appreciate how good that match was. And I think it'll go down as one of the greatest matches of the Australian Open ever. Rafa did pick up a hardcourt title in Acapulco early in the year, then didn't play tennis for 6 months. And when I say didn't play tennis, I mean I don't think he picked up a tennis racket. Quoting him, I think he was just sitting eating pizzas, playing PlayStation, but it didn't seem to affect him when he got to the French. He did return in Rome, lost in straight sets as I just mentioned to Diego Schwartzman. So the big question was, would he win the 13th French Open title? You know, for the first time, I think, of me watching the French Open, I did doubt Rafa would win the French. The conditions were against him. The ball change seemed to have an effect on him mentally. Didn't have any real preparation. Didn't. I think he played 3 competitive matches within 6 months. So would he win a 13th French? And he completely proved me and everybody else who doubted him wrong. Nadal was just on a different level to everybody in the draw. Won the title without dropping a set, and just utterly dominated Djokovic from ball 1 in the final, and fully deserved to pick up his 13th French Open title and 20th Grand Slam. I'm never doubting Rafa again at the French. I said that in my previous videos following the French Open, and although he lost to Zverev in the Paris Masters earlier this month, he's already lost to Thiem again on hard court this year. He didn't play in the US, so he hasn't had any real practice on a hard court since the resumption of tennis. There's other players carrying more momentum and form into this, but you can't write Rafa off. I don't think he's one of the favourites, but as I've said, you can't write Rafa off. If he comes in this tournament fully motivated and wanting to win, then you can't look past him really. Dominic Thiem. 2020 was the year that Dominic Thiem eventually became a Grand Slam champion. A lot of people said, Dominic Thiem deserves to win a Grand Slam, and I'm never a believer of you deserve to win a Grand Slam. I think you have to earn everything, and particularly in individual sports. But it was great to see Thiem lift a Grand Slam after suffering some close defeats in the past to the likes of Nadal at the French and Djokovic at the Australian. He did actually reach the final of the Australian Open again this year, facing Djokovic. He led 2-1 on sets, playing outstanding tennis, but the forehand seemed to let him down in the big stages. Djokovic came back and won, and it got me thinking, will it ever happen for Dominic Thiem? You think he's on the brink of eventually winning a Grand Slam, and his forehand seems to let him down, and he let Djokovic back in that match, who took advantage and lifted his 8th Australian Open title. It got me wondering whether, can Dominic Thiem play better than that? Can he get over the line next time? But yes was the answer. Djokovic exited the US thanks to that disqualification against Pablo Carreño Busta. There was no Rafael Nadal, and I think Dominic Thiem sensed his opportunity. Became favourite, and he really took advantage. I was very, very impressed with Dominic Thiem from that quarter-final stage. He realised when Djokovic left that, hang on, this is my chance, to win a Grand Slam. I've been to finals before. I've lost to Nadal, I've lost to Djokovic, but there's nobody in my way in this draw. And as I say, he was mightily impressive in the way he just brushed people aside and was aggressive, brutal game style that we know he can produce, and he fully deserved to win his first ever US Open title. He's certainly done it the hard way. Zverev led 2-0 in sets in that final before Thiem showed the guile, the fight, the heart, and the brutal aggressive tennis to come back and win. The match deciding tiebreak was a sort of war of attrition that really could have went either way. Dominic Thiem had an Achilles injury that meant he could barely walk. Zverev's head had completely gone after he blew the 2-set lead and served for the match. But it was Thiem who eventually lifted the trophy, which is all the important thing. Schwartzman defeated him at the French. Again, an unbelievable match involving Dominic Thiem that seems to be a recurrence over the past few years. The level that Thiem's producing is quite incredible, and it's taken special performances for anybody to beat him. I was surprised how fresh Dominic Thiem looked at the French and how he competed over 5 sets against Schwartzman. I doubted whether he would even turn up at the French after that injury and winning the US. I thought he might take a lot of time off. It wasn't to be the case. We know how incredibly fit he is and how much he works off court to be ready for these events. Although he's had a fantastic 2020, he's capable of beating all these players as he's done in the past. I just wonder how much this is taken out of Dominic Thiem physically and mentally. You know, it's been a long, hard tournament in the US, a war with Schwartzman at the French, an injury in the US. Can he pull himself together for another huge effort? I certainly wouldn't write him off, but the likes of Zverev, Medvedev, Djokovic, Tsitsipas are perhaps a little bit fresher than Thiem. But if Thiem is 100% ready and fit, then yeah, he's another player who throws his hat in the ring for this tournament. Andrei Rublev, what a player. ATP Finals is a tournament I think is always watched by the big audience. You know, you don't have the early rounds that can perhaps be comprehensive and not great to watch. The top 8 players always provide fantastic entertainment and matches. If you're watching tennis for the first time next week or haven't heard of Andrei Rublev, make sure you tune into these matches. The guy is blockbuster, a star of the future, so good to watch, puts everything into every shot, draws you in really with the sort of sounds that he makes, even, you know, just backhands down the line, his consistent forehand, he just puts so much into every shot, and you can see how much he's worked to get to the stage that he's at. His double-handed backhand is one of the best in the world, just a fantastic stroke that he makes look so easy but is so hard. His 2020 hasn't been too bad either. 5 ATP titles, 2 Grand Slam quarterfinals, a top 10 finish, and a place at the Tour Finals for the first time in his career. He's arguably been the player of 2020. I think he's won the second most matches after Novak Djokovic. I certainly wouldn't make him favourite for this event, but he's a player that has been a winner machine this year. He backs himself, he's beat the best before, and he'll be entertaining regardless. So watch out for Andrei Rublev next week. He could certainly spring some major surprises. Stefanos Tsitsipas won this title last year in one of the most devastating and destructive performances I think I've seen at an event for a long time. He was so impressive. From match 1 through to the final, he just out-hit everybody and nobody could live with his power or shot variety. Could he repeat it this year? Why not? I'm sure he's confident he can do it. He's been criticised in the past about his Grand Slam results. Again, he only reached the 3rd round of the Australian Open this year, but then won the title in Marseille and reached the final of Dubai before tennis stopped, which shows he's got good hard court form this year, which is a positive going to this event. Reached the 3rd round of the US Open before losing a close 5-set to Borna Coric, another player improving all the time that I'm sure will do big things in the future. Tsitsipas showed who he is in the semi-final of the French Open against Djokovic, 2 sets down, losing the big points against the world number 1. Could have just packed up and, sent him out. This is not my time. He showed immense fight and quality to force a decider in that one. He ripped through the defences of Djokovic, big time aggressive tennis. And Tsitsipas at his best can, be devastating and beat anybody in the world. I often feel sorry that Tsitsipas can be passive and turn matches into 50-50s by not imposing himself on the match, not being aggressive enough, not coming into the net enough when I think Tsitsipas is at his best. But when he has imposed himself like he did against Djokovic in that French Open semi-final, like he did in the ATP Tour Finals last year, the results speak for themselves. He shows he's the best, up there with the best in the world. In terms of predicting a winner, I'm sorry, but it's impossible. The top 8 players in the world for a reason. A round robin format. It's down to who is ready, who wants it the most, who comes at the tournament fully fit. It's been a topsy-turvy year where all players haven't had ideal preparation, but I'm just thankful we've got the event on. Djokovic achieved what he wanted to this year in terms of being world number one for the 6th time at the end of the year, levelling with Pete Sampras. I certainly wouldn't disregard him in this year, but he has had a tough year mentally. Does he just want to rest for Australia? Thiem, again, another player who's had a very long year mentally as well. He's won a Grand Slam, which I'm sure has been playing in his mind for a long time. He had that injury in the US. Is he 100% fit? Nadal has barely played in a hard court this year. Other players in better form, but we all know Nadal can turn it on as he did at the French. There's so many unanswered questions that I can't wait to be answered. In my prediction, I'm going to tip Alexander Zverev or Stefanos Tsitsipas to win it. I just think they're fresh young players who are suited to fast hard courts, best of 3 set matches. If them two can produce the devastating aggressive tennis that we all know they can, that they've shown them winning this title before, then I think they're certainly 2 players that can lift the title next week, but it's really wide open. I mean, if Andre Rublev was to turn up and blow everybody for the court, I wouldn't be in the slightest bit surprised after the 2020 he's had. So yeah, that's it. The video went a little bit longer than expected, but when you're talking about the top 8 players in the world, there's always talking points and stats to talk about. As I've said, I will be doing videos daily, I think, throughout the tournament, just talking about the matches coming up and the matches that have happened. I'll be doing live text commentaries on Grand Slam Tennis Online, which I'll leave a link to their website in the description below. And if you would subscribe, I would massively appreciate it. I will be covering this event and lots of events in the future, hopefully, as I say, live from the events next year if coronavirus allows. But it just helps build a profile for when I'm applying for sport jobs and stuff, so if you do want to subscribe, it's massively appreciated. But thanks for watching the video. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.